followed
Houston
about
Station,
3
ISS
minutes.
thrusters are enabled.
Houston copies.
The depart burn 0 will be followed by the second departure burn in just about 3 minutes around 6:20 a.m. Central, 7:20 a.m. Eastern, known as depart burn 1, and that will help move the spacecraft beyond the keep out sphere. And just a moment ago, you were hearing some communication between the Capcom or capsule communicator here in Mission Control Houston and the crew aboard the International Space Station. Currently on board the International Space Station, NASA astronaut Anne McClain was on tap to monitor and support Dragon's departure activities today. So once that second departure burn is completed in a couple of minutes from now, the Dragon and Axiom Mission 4 crew will move beyond the keep out sphere, and the keep out sphere is that invisible 200-meter line.
AX4 crew wants to thank you very much for your support. You guys are amazing.
You just heard some kind words from Axiom Mission 4 Commander, thanking the flight control team for all of their support throughout their 18-day mission.
Our friendship and goodwill forever be an example of the good that results from shared optimism. Axiom 4, Godspeed, and safe journey home to the best planet in the solar system.
Copies.
Some additional congratulatory and departure words from the International Space Station crew to the Axiom Mission 4 crew on board Dragon as it continues its departure from the International Space Station. Again, we had that physical separation take place about 4 minutes ago at 6:15 a.m. Central, 7:15 a.m. Eastern. And we are standing by for the second in a series of 4 departure burns to take place in about 1 minute from now, and this will push the Dragon spacecraft and the Axiom Mission 4 crew beyond the keep out sphere. That keep out sphere is the invisible 200-meter line centered on the space station, and it is one of several safety zones set up to govern spacecraft arriving and departing from the space station. Before moving into the keep out sphere, spacecraft have to be configured where they would not cross the imaginary boundary for at least 4 orbits, even if the spacecraft lost all maneuvering. We are now about 10 seconds away from that second departure burn. Dragon is currently about 80 meters away from the International Space Station as it continues its departure. And depart burn 1, again, that second departure burn in a series of 4 is now underway, and it'll last about 20 seconds.
Dragon SpaceX on the Big Loop, depart burn 1 complete and nominal. You are go to DOF suits per procedure 4.012.
Nominal departure and 4012 for Dragon.
We just had confirmation there that that second departure burn, known as depart burn 1, has completed, and it was executed as expected. The crew is now going to start doffing or removing their spacesuits and getting settled in for their 22.5-hour journey back to Earth, again with that splashdown targeted for tomorrow morning, July 15th, off the coast of California. And as a reminder, just like during its approach to the International Space Station, Dragon's departure and deorbit is designed to be fully autonomous, requiring no action from the crew on board. However, unlike Dragon's arrival, there are no hold points during the departure sequence, therefore it takes a lot less time to leave the vicinity of the space station than to arrive. So we just had confirmation of that second departure burn being completed, and that is the second in a series of 4. However, it's the only one that was left within the vicinity of the space station. The next departure burn will take place about 45 minutes from now after Dragon is well on its way back to Earth and outside of the approach ellipsoid. Dragon is now about 195 meters away from the International Space Station. Should be crossing the keep out sphere momentarily. And we just heard confirmation that Dragon has exited the keep out sphere. Again, the keep out sphere is an invisible 200-meter line centered on the space station. It's one of several safety zones set up to govern spacecraft arriving and departing from the International Space Station. While spacecraft are inside the keep out sphere, they have to be configured where they would not cross into the imaginary boundary for at least 4 orbits, even if the spacecraft lost all maneuvering. Next major milestone for Dragon's departure will be exiting the approach ellipsoid. This is planned to take place about 13 minutes from now.
Dragon Station, Houston on the Big Loop. Dragon has exited the keep out sphere.
Dragon copies.
Station copies.
Station looks beautiful.
Dragon Grace, if we didn't have a shutter constraint, you could see us waving.
All right, Grace copies.
Now that Dragon has exited the keep out sphere, the next major milestone for Dragon is crossing the approach ellipsoid. That will take place a little over 10 minutes from now. That approach ellipsoid is another imaginary shape similar to the keep out sphere, but this time it's a 3-dimensional ellipsoid measuring 4 kilometers by 2 kilometers by 2 kilometers. And one of the key differences with the approach ellipsoid is that vehicles outside of it have to be on what we call a 24-hour safe free drift trajectory. This means the spacecraft would not cross into the approach ellipsoid for at least 24 hours, even if it lost all maneuvering. After the spacecraft crosses the approach ellipsoid, joint operations will end and responsibility for the spacecraft will be handed back to the SpaceX Flight Control Team in Hawthorne, California. Again, everything continuing to look good with Dragon's departure today following a physical separation about 10 minutes ago at 6:15 a.m. Central, 7:15 a.m. Eastern. Dragon is now about 340 meters away from the International Space Station and continuing to increase that distance. And teams on the ground will continue to monitor the weather ahead of a splashdown tomorrow, Tuesday, July 15th at 5:31 a.m. Eastern off the coast of California. After Dragon exits the approach ellipsoid, there will be a couple of more departure burns and phasing burns to set the spacecraft up for the correct phasing and location for splashdown. And for those of you who are just joining us, the SpaceX Dragon spacecraft carrying the Axiom Mission 4 crew recently undocked from the International Space Station's Harmony module at 6:15 a.m. Central, 7:15 a.m. Eastern to complete an 18-day stay aboard the orbiting laboratory.
Station Houston on the Big Loop. Johnny, please give Huntsville a call on Space to Ground 4.